Hi, this is John Qualls, president of Purpose HQ. I am so pleased to have the opportunity to talk to you today. I tell you, it is very interesting times out there. I like to say uncertain times. And, as I look back on my career, there's been a lot of these really challenging times over the decades. And we really believe that this is when some of the greatest organizations, the greatest things where people come together and really have these tremendous opportunities that come out of this. That's how we're looking at it. I hope you're looking at it the same way. And what we're excited about is that this is really the time. It really is about the people. And so what I'd like to talk a little bit about today is kind of talent optimization. And talent optimization is really this emerging framework where it comes down to you have your business and the results that you want for that business, and what's in between that is always the people. And it's how do we get that lined up? So to us, that framework really involves 4 areas. Those 4 areas are, the first one is the design, right? So how do you design the right team to get from where you are to where you want to go? That's crucial. Make sure they're aligned about what that looks like. So design is an important part of this kind of framework around talent optimization. That second part is the hiring part. We all know how important it is to get the right people on the team, and this framework around hiring the right people. And we like to say, let's do that with a little more science, a little more data, and a little more purpose around that about how we hire folks onto the team. The next one is, you have those people on the team. How do you inspire the ones that you have? And particularly in times like this, right? How do you get them excited about coming back into work and doing those things? And the last one is that diagnose, right? So diagnose, I found in my career, we sure spend a lot of time on incidents. Incidents tend to be expensive and complicated and messy. And a lot of times if we could just pause for a moment, try to understand what some of the root causes of the incidents that we have within our organization, it's a lot cheaper to resolve them. And a lot of times it's a lot easier to get in front of them before they actually happen. So talent optimization really is this approach of design, hire, inspire, and diagnose, right, to align the business strategy with the people strategy. And when those things are lined up, great things tend to happen. Which then leads us into when they don't line up? What is those misalignments? And what we've found is that there really is kind of 4 major misalignments that happen when those things aren't working together. Those 4 things, the first one, and I really say it's the first one, but it's the second, third, and fourth one that really sets up the first one. But I really believe it's one of the most important ones, and that is culture. Culture, there's kind of 2 of them. There's the one that you inherited or you allow, right? The one that you allow, and the one that you craft. And I have to say that in my career, at times I've inherited them and I've allowed them to stay that way. I've somehow find myself in a place where I'm allowing a culture to occur that's really not who I am and what I wanted as an organization. So one of the things you might be thinking about from an alignment standpoint is, are you allowing or are you crafting your culture? A lot of times people ask me, when do we have, when do you know that you've got culture figured out or you're doing the right thing? Here's my best take on it. There's a problem that happens either with a customer or internally that's significant and it needs to be addressed. And you've created a culture that allows that to be resolved without you being in the room. And I have found, and I feel like I have a small ego on this, a lot of times they come up with something a lot better than if I was there. But that's when I really know that I've really crafted a culture when those really tough decisions and really those great opportunities that we can seize as a business happens when I'm not in the room. That's a great culture. But when those things are misaligned, right, when it's a toxic culture, it's not good for anyone. Right? And when we allow those things, it just permeates throughout the entire organization and doesn't really optimize it for what it could actually really be. That second misalignment is job fit. And we've all talked about getting the right people on the bus. I know that I've been guilty of hiring people for skills and experience, and then I usually let them go for personality and behavioral conflicts and some of these other things. I've always said, why can't we just take the approach of looking at the whole person? You know, I like to think of it, if I could just hire harder, I could probably manage easier. And candidly, I'd rather manage easier, right? So really coming at it, looking at the whole person. Now, the approach that we look at is the head, the heart, and the briefcase. We've all done the briefcase thing, the skills and experience. But have you ever thought and said, wait a minute, does this person have the behavioral and cognitive needs for this particular role, right? The aptitude for this role? And can we look at that part of it? You know, what are the behaviors that we need for this role? Is everybody on the same page about what those things are? And if you think you have, let me ask you this question. If someone came to you and said, hey, we need to hire some more salespeople, is everybody on the same page about what a salesperson is within the organization? I think you'll find that you probably are not, right? There's a lot of different flavors of salespeople. So that job fit, head, heart, right? Alignment of values. Soft skills are so important today, but how do we measure soft skills and that cultural alignment when it comes to that? So head, heart, briefcase when it comes to job fit. Do they have the cognitive and behavioral alignment that we want? Are the soft skills and the values, do they match up, right? Because that's going to go and build into our culture. And then that last one is the skills and experience. Always important that you have some of that, but some of these other areas are just as important when it comes to job fit. So that's the second misalignment that we want to get in front of. The third one, team dynamics, right? You know, I've always felt like there always should be some friction between the teams, you know, that kind of sharpen each other, right? You know, like a lot of times there's sales and delivery. There's some tension there, right? You know, salespeople can't overpromise what the people need to deliver, and they do need to deliver, but there needs to be a respect there. So there has to be some tension. But when that tension is kind of tainted with that department and our department versus some other department, then you're on this road where 1 + 1 is -7, and that's not a place to be. So this misalignment of team dynamics, we think is also extremely important when it comes to these 4 major misalignments, leading us to this the fourth one, and this has to do with leadership development. You know, we feel, and I feel a lot of times that there is a major human capital transfer going on. You know, you got 10,000 boomers retiring every day and about 2,500 people replacing them. And there is just this human capital supply chain shift that's going through, and there's so much executives and managers and all that's moving up. And it's really development of taking someone from an employee to a manager to an executive, taking them from a job to a career to a vocation is paramount for the success of any organization, particularly when we look at things over the next 20 years. You know, times are interesting right now with high unemployment and other, but if you really look at the numbers, it's there's going to be more roles out there than there are people to fill them, which means retention and all those pieces that really makes your organization hum is going to be important. And it's going to come down to that leadership piece. Are you enabling your leaders to really understand how to meet people where they are? We talk a lot about exclusivity or inclusivity when we look at some of the challenges that we have in the world, and how does that happen, right? And that really happens by understanding where people are and meeting them where that is. So the 4 misalignments, again, right, is a misalignment of culture, job fit, team fit, and that leadership development. Those are the kind of 4 misalignments. Which leads me to the third piece, and this is the part I'm obviously named the organization Purpose HQ, very, very passionate about purpose. And not only we believe is that a purpose-driven organization is driven by purpose-driven individuals. And what are really the 5 steps of purpose, right, individually and organizationally? And here's what we believe they are and why they're important. The first one is, who are you, right? The ability for an individual to understand who they really are, right? Their personality, their behavior, all those types of things. Understanding what that is and being very self-aware is part of that journey of emotional intelligence and all that part of that development of the individual. So who are you? The second one is, who are you not? So often we define who we are not by what we say yes to. Yes is easy. it's saying no. Because when you say yes, you end up filling your life just full of nothing but, instead of filling them full of commitments, you're really filling them with obligations. So who are you not is kind of that second step of what is purpose. The third one is, if you know who you are and you know who you're not, how do you then use that to interact with others, right? So how do you interact with others? And this is that group dynamic piece. The more comfortable you are in your own skin, the more you know what you say yes and say no to. Then when you go to work with people, you can use that same framework to understand who they are, and we end up meeting each other halfway. And this is where the root cause of a lot of those symptoms I talked about earlier happens. So that third piece is, how do you interact with others based on the framework of the first two? The fourth one is, what do you do? So who are you? Who are you not? How do you work with others? But what do you do? What is that thing that you bring to the role? What is your secret sauce? What is your unique ability that you bring to the table? And really, that's where a lot of confidence happens, is when you know what that is, right? It's paramount, super important to know why you do it. Leading to the last part of purpose, and that is why you do it. Who are you? Who are you not? How do you work with others? What do you do? And why do you do it? Is it to take care of your family? Is it to change the world? Is it to be the best blank, whatever it is around this role and a part of the organization? We think about a purpose-driven organization, it is, why do they come to work? And if the only reason they come to work is to exchange time for money, I think you might be missing out on a huge opportunity. So, putting all that together, and I kind of maybe summarize it all together, talent optimization really is aligning your business strategy with your people strategy, design, hire, inspire, and diagnose those people challenges through there. And when those things are lined up, you avoid the four major misalignments of culture, job fit, team fit, and leadership development. And when you can put those two pieces together, you can then build on the 5 things of building a purpose-driven organization with purpose-driven people that know who they are, know who they're not, how they're going to interact with others, what do they do, and why do they do it. I believe this is a tremendous opportunity for you to take a step back in these uncertain times. You know, everybody wants certainty. I've always felt like all I can give you is clarity. And there's so much outside of the world that we can't control, but controlling who we are and who we're not, how we interact with others, what do we do and why we do it, that isn't completely in our control. And I wish you and your organizations the opportunity to discover that. We'd love to be part of that. PurposeHQ.com if you want to know more about what that is. But boy, I'm so delighted to have the opportunity to share kind of this vision with you today, and just such an opportunity in these interesting times. I hope you have the opportunity to put together a purpose-driven organization. You know, the way I always like to say is, you know, purpose, why go to work without it? So, you know, when it comes to hiring, I have to admit, I don't have a career of being absolutely perfect when it comes to that. And it really took me a long time to really kind of narrow down how I wanted to hire and really kind of learn from a lot of mistakes. You know, like me, you've probably had some opportunities where you thought of a job and that you needed, and you put that job out there, and some people sent you some resumes and they looked really good on paper, and then you brought them in for an interview, and boy, I don't know about you, but I've run into some Academy Award presentations in the interviews. Unbelievable actors, just incredible actors in the interview, and wow, I was like, wow, it was amazing, and we ended up making them an offer, and then we hire them, and you know, somewhere around 90 days in, this other person shows up who wasn't in the movie during the interview. It was like, what? Where was this? How did I miss this? And so this thought of really coming in and looking at it from just the skills and experience isn't enough. I kind of feel like it's a crapshoot. And candidly, a lot of times I can be swayed. Candidly, I'm not perfect. I bring biases sometimes into the interview, and sometimes I'm so desperate to fill the role that, you know, I interview 3 and say, what's the best out of 3? And the reality is none of the 3 were really a good fit, but somehow I've narrowed it down to these 3 because of some some sense of urgency on my part to fill this role. And so you end up, pulling the trigger on a mediocre or a bad situation when you should have just taken a little bit of time and got to the best situation. So this head, heart, and briefcase to really see the whole person and what that is, and knowing what that role is. So, I like to say in the head side, there's the behavioral alignment to the job. And, a lot of times, we say the role, and we're not really sure if the whole team is on the same page about what that role is. I like to say salespeople. What kind of salesperson? Are we looking for a hunter? Are we looking for a farmer? What are we selling? Is this transactional sales? Is it relationship sales? Is it technical sales? Is it process sales? No, just go hire a salesperson. A lot of times we end up telling HR go hire a salesperson, but we're not really aligned about what that actual is. So really knowing what that is, I like to think of the head side of it, super important about what that is. I use the word cognitive. A lot of people think cognitive, they think smart. And who doesn't want smart people? But I like to look at it a little differently. And I'm really interested in what, intelligence, cognitive to me is how big the sponge is. I don't know if I have the largest sponge than anyone else. There's a lot of really smart people out there with really big sponges. But I use sponge as an analogy because I'm really more interested in what their absorption rate is. And, I don't know about you, but I'm a little older now. And my sponge, regardless how big it is, I feel like I have to give up a memory to keep one now. And so my absorption rate isn't there. And but when I look at the role that I might be hiring for, that might be really important. I need someone to hit the ground running in 90 days. I don't have 18 months for them to figure it out. And so that's really important sometimes, and when you look at that head side, is what is that cognitive or aptitude ability for the role needed, and how do we look at that? Soft skills, right? We're talking about the heart side of it, is what, everyone says, well, no one's coming in with the right soft skills, but where are you going to develop it, and how do you know where to begin? I think that's also paramount about how we look at these. And, a lot of times you can bring them in, and a lot of these team conflicts end up coming to these personality or soft skill misalignment. And, end of the day, who doesn't want, a team of really strong, emotionally intelligent people, and how do you develop that? At the end of the day, we're probably going to have to build them better going forward than where we've come from in the past. One of the tools that we use, and I know I've used in my career, but we use extensively here, is assessments. And assessments is a kind of dirty word. I've always wanted to write an article, assessments suck, long live assessments. To me, some of the challenges I think with assessments, and particularly some of those out there that are pushing them, not saying we don't use them, is really what the definition of what it is and what you're going to use it for. To us, an assessment, it's a scientific shortcut and framework to give us insight and maybe dialogue to the challenge that we're trying to work with. And the most important part of that entire piece is, what is the problem we're trying to solve? What is it we're trying to align? And then what will give us insight to that? And then maybe it's an assessment or some questions that we might use. So, some of the challenges I think for those who are pretty overzealous when it comes to the assessments is somehow they will solve depression and diarrhea, constipation, and acne. It's just amazing all the promises that we can make around it. I've always said, let me take a step back and say, what am I trying to understand? So when I look at the interview process and trying to get everybody aligned, it's like, what are the behavioral needs that we need for this role, and how do we measure that for this person to see where that is? Because again, they could probably come in the interview and do an Academy Award presentation about presenting who they are and tap dancing in the interview. But I'm more interested in hiring the person that's going to show up on the 91st day of employment. And a lot of times, the right, proper assessment used at the right time to give you the insight is a great tool to understand what that 91st day person who is going to show up. And a lot of people look at them and say, particularly when people weaponize these tools, end of the day, the best thing you can do for your organization and for that individual is put them in the right role that set them up to succeed. And sometimes that has to do with, what are the behavioral needs of this role that we want? What is the aptitude that we want to see for this role that we want? Where are they going to fit when it comes to their emotional intelligence journey? And it is a journey, it is a point in time, it is a journey, but where's that going to fit in our organization and where our organization is today? So I highly encourage you, when you start looking at the interviewing process or the hiring process or the job fit process, that you look at the whole person, right? The head, the heart, and that briefcase, still important, right? And really come in and make a better informed decision, which to me is what I'm always looking for, is how can I maybe use a little science and my gut instead of just my gut to make a better informed decision. So the area that we see, this emerging space of talent optimization, we believe is going to be significant about how you manage your talent going forward. And this framework is really made up of kind of 4 areas, this talent optimization. And now talent optimization, right? So you have where your organization is, right? Your business strategy, and you have the outcomes that you want. And in the middle are these people. And so it's a framework of addressing this people strategy aligned to the business strategy. So the first one is these 4 areas in talent optimization is design, right? So it's really, how do we design the right team? And a lot of times you look at your executive team, how do you design the right executive team, and do you have all the coverage that you need there? And really getting them on the same page. So many times I know we start looking at next year, we go through a strategic process and we think we're all on the same page, only to find in the first quarter or second quarter that the interpretation of that strategy everyone wasn't on the same page. And before you know it, then seem like we're going back, right? So design is an important part of this framework of talent optimization. The second one is the hire, right? So we've all talked about getting the right people on the bus, but it really is kind of bringing some science and a methodology to the hiring thing, other than just kind of shooting from the hip. And by the way, I'm guilty. I'm absolutely guilty throughout my career of shooting from the hip, going with my gut, and then end up having to back out of those situations. We all say, hire slow, fire quickly, and there's some truth to that. But in this framework, when it comes to hire, can we bring a methodology and some kind of science to it, so that we can make a better informed decision? Now we got them on board, and I think you're going to find, and I know I've found that people today, particularly the young people coming into our businesses, want more than just a job. They want a purpose. They want something that means something. And so this third piece of the framework is the inspire. How do you inspire the ones that you have? How do you keep them engaged? How do you make all that work? And a lot of this is just helping them understand who they are and their role within the organization and their role within the groups that they're part of, right? The team dynamics is super important when it comes to that, the inspire part of talent optimization. And the last piece of it, right? So you have the design, hire, and inspire, but there is the diagnosis, right? This is there's incidents that happen all the time with our people. I always like to say incidents are extremely expensive. They're complicated, they're messy. Last week, 2 employees were in a meeting, they got in a shouting match, things were said, words were said, now HR's involved. And then you put whatever you need to of these 2 individuals, right? Gender, ethnicity, sexual orientation, whatever it is, make that incident into a really expensive, messy problem. That happens all the time. And so can we, from a diagnosis standpoint, understand what some of those root causes are and get in front of them before they become an incident, and we can get in front of the cause? So talent optimization, aligning the business strategy with the people strategy to design, really hire, inspire, and diagnose that people alignment to really set ourselves up for success.